with that, I'll take a few questions.
Mr. Speaker.
Chad.
Good morning. You say yesterday that you were in lockstep with the administration on the Epstein files, but it doesn't seem that you're in lockstep with all of your House Republicans. Thomas Massey just saying in the past hour that this is going to come back and bite Republicans. What do you say to those schisms inside your conference here?
I say Thomas Massey is the one trying to bite Republicans, okay? I'm not quite certain what his strategy is.
But it's just not him. I mean, otherwise you guys wouldn't be calling off the week tomorrow. You'd be able to put your rules on the floor. I understand the issue with the Democrats.
Yeah, no,
So I want to stop right there. That is Republican Speaker Mike Johnson getting grilled by a Fox News reporter because Johnson and Trump have teamed up to effectively shut down Congress 1 week before Congress goes on a month-long vacation because Democrats are forcing Republicans to take really politically inconvenient votes about releasing the Epstein files, and Republicans and Trump really don't want to release the Epstein files. So this is a public humiliation of epic proportion, and we have to talk about it. But before we do, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we're going to take a look at some of these other clips, but before we do, I want to read this article here from Politico, which gets into the nuances, the particulars of what's going on here. Epstein crisis forces House GOP to scrap votes. Republicans will not tee up a series of bills this week because Democrats are continuing to force votes over releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files. House Republicans will scrap several votes this week as internal party drama over the Jeffrey Epstein files derails a key committee that handles legislation on its way to the floor. The House Rules Committee came to a standstill Monday night as GOP leaders struggled to contain rank-and-file Republicans and their Democratic allies, clamoring for a floor vote to compel the publication of materials related to the disgraced financier and convicted sex offender. Committee Democrats had planned to force a vote that evening on legislation that would call for the release of the materials, as the panel worked to tee up floor consideration on a slate of unrelated bills. It was poised to be a repeat of what transpired last Thursday inside Rules, which gummed up the works for several hours. But rather than this time work through the Democratic disruption, Republicans chose instead Monday to recess the rest of the Rules meeting altogether, with House Majority Leader Steve Scalise saying it was, quote, unlikely that the panel would reconvene this week at all. Later, lawmakers said that there were no plans to return at all. This means House members will depart for August recess at the week's end without being able to vote on legislation that would not otherwise be able to pass on the chamber floor with a simple majority vote, including an immigration-related bill that would increase penalties for individuals who enter the country illegally and a water permitting measure. The House will still vote on measures that can be taken up under an expedited procedure typically reserved for non-controversial legislation that can pass with a two-thirds majority of those present and voting, such as a bill that would establish new zip codes for certain communities and deter China in the ongoing Taiwan conflict. Quote, see you in September, said Rules Committee Ranking Member Jim McGovern. He was spearheading the effort to call up a vote on the legislation from Representatives Thomas Massey, Republican of Kentucky, and Ro Khanna. The two men are working to force a floor vote that would on that bill through a procedural maneuver known as a discharge petition, which allows members to put a bill on the floor without leadership approval if the effort gets 218 signatures. Scalise blamed Democrats for the meltdown. Quote, at the end of the day, look, Democrats are yelling and screaming, he said in an interview. They spent 4 years covering up for Epstein, and at least Donald Trump is in the courts right now trying to get documents released, and I really think they're going to see, hopefully, a lot of unsealed from that, and then we've got some other options. Now, that's hilarious, Cope, because Democrats weren't the ones who campaigned on releasing the Epstein files, you dishonest piece of Scalise, right? It was your party that did that, and your guy's in office now, and he could snap his fingers and make it happen and chose not to. So it's hilarious that the party covering up for Epstein and is so desperate to cover up for Epstein that they're literally de facto shutting Congress down for a week in advance of this month-long vacation are accusing the other side of covering up for Epstein. That's hilarious. Ralph Norman, Republican of South Carolina, a member of the Rules Committee, also accused Democrats of, quote, grandstanding and said Republicans refused to give the minority party, quote, an endless microphone. McGovern, in a statement, accused Republicans of making their own mess. Quote, Democrats on the Rules Committee gave Republicans a choice, either vote to release the Epstein files or keep them a secret. Republicans are so afraid from taking a vote that they're torching their own agenda instead of doing something they promised voters they would do. Trump and his top allies have been pushing this for years, and people aren't going to forget about it in a month. Massey, speaking to reporters Monday night, was unrepentant. He'd just been seen walking into the House floor with a binder labeled the Epstein Files Phase 2 and the bill number of his resolution with Khanna. Quote, their Epstein bill resolution is non-binding, so it's kind of fake. The resolution I have with Khanna would be binding on the president, Massey said, explaining the breakdown between Republican leaders and other members of the House. Rules leadership last week teed up compromise legislation that would simply support the release of the Epstein materials, which opponents called too weak, and which Speaker Mike Johnson said he won't bring to the floor anyway, right? That's what Johnson was referring to at the beginning. We're going to play again clips in which he makes his case. Like even the watered down version with no teeth. Johnson is so afraid of Trump, afraid that it would somehow be a slap in the face of Trump, he won't even bring that to a floor for the vote, even though it's impotent. It's a virtue signal. Scalise reiterated that decision, saying in a brief interview, quote, "The Trump administration's petitioned the courts to release some of the sealed documents. Hopefully the courts will act swiftly. It'd be important if they got that out." So, of course, they're referring to grand jury testimony, not the Epstein files. Grand jury testimony, according to most lawyers, is a fraction of a rounding error of the Epstein files. So not exactly, the meat and potatoes of the issue, but let's hear more from Mike Johnson as he tries to spin this.
I just explained why. We're not going to play political games with this. We've all been very clear and transparent. The House Rules Resolution sets a good standard and requires all credible evidence to be released, and that's exactly where the White House is. There's no, as I've said many times over the last, as I've said many times, there's no daylight between the White House and the House. You have to allow the legislation to ripen, and you also have to allow the administration the space to do what it is doing. The president has said clearly, and he has now ordered his DOJ to do what it is we've all needed DOJ to do for years now, and that is to get everything released. So
he's lying there. They're not releasing everything. Again, Mike Johnson, self-professed Christian, lying his ass off to the reporters and to the American people. Donald Trump did not order Attorney General Pam Bondi to release the Epstein files. He ordered her to release pertinent grand jury testimony. So if you take all the grand jury testimony in aggregate, most lawyers estimate it's about 1% to 2% of the so-called Epstein files in their totality. And that's assuming all of the grand jury files are released, which of course they won't be. So again, Johnson's lying here, just explicitly lying about what's behind his maneuver and what's behind Trump's order on this. I want to play another clip here and then get a reaction from one of Mike Johnson's colleagues in the House.
Two questions. First is, did the president or anyone in the administration ask you to delay the resolution until after recess?
No. But I, as you all know, I speak to the president multiple times a day on a typical day, often, always. And what I know about the president's heart on this is that he agrees with everything I've said here today. He wants maximum transparency, but he's also very insistent that we do not subject people who have already been victims of unspeakable crimes to further public scrutiny. And it would be a very dangerous thing.
That's not why Trump is behind this. Otherwise, Trump would have said that from the very beginning, that he would not release the Epstein files because he doesn't want to re-victimize, the victims of Jeffrey Epstein. That was never the case. To the extent that he offered any sort of hesitation or qualification on record in the past about releasing the Epstein files, which he said he would still do anyway, is that he doesn't want fake news to get out there, phony information. He was worried about people like him and former President Bill Clinton and others who were associated with Epstein who might be reputationally tarnished in some way. And that's the good faith interpretation. Didn't give a damn about Epstein's victims. Trump himself has been credibly accused dozens of times by people for sexual assault. He was found liable for sexual abuse and defamation of E. Jean Carroll, which the presiding judge clarified was rape in the common parlance. So again, miss me with that shit. Donald Trump doesn't give a damn about any of that. He's trying to slow walk this because he's afraid that he is implicated in some way, shape, or form in the Epstein files, either in the illegal conduct or in the reputationally damaging aspects as well. And that's all he's trying to do is just drag this out. So Mike Johnson has no credibility on this. One of his colleagues, Sean Casten, says, "You don't endorse and support a convicted felon and adjudicated rapist who you partied with Epstein and get to claim that you have a moral foundation on which you make decisions. Johnson might be a coward. He might be a Jim Jordan-level enabler, but he ain't a moral leader," which is very true. But there you have it, folks. Donald Trump and MAGA Mike Johnson have teamed up to effectively shut down the House of Representatives for all intents and purposes, 1 week before they go on a month-long vacation anyway. And it's all because if they try to actually pass shit or vote on shit, Democrats are going to force them to vote on the Epstein files as well. And if they were going to put their money where their mouth is, they would vote, yes, please release the Epstein files. But they won't do it. They're afraid to do it. They're panicked. And so they're basically shutting down Congress 1 week before they go on vacation for a month. Pretty pathetic. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.